welcome. I'm going to introduce our speaker tonight. When the email came out announcing this, my jaw dropped open, and I thought, oh my God, I can hardly wait to hear this presentation, which was in Virginia Beach a couple of weeks ago, the first time ever in English. In fact, maybe the first time ever anywhere, whether in English, because Nassos translated the Greek text so that we English speakers could have this story, and it's only been presented once before. So this is almost a world premiere of this really unique presentation. It's startling in many ways, and I think you'll be challenged to think about how time works and how the planetary future seems to be unfolding along the timeline that led to how this story came into being. And our speaker tonight is a native of Greece, and he was telling us this afternoon that he sort of just made the announcement to his parents once he was going to the United States to study. And they didn't think this was possible, but he had relatives in Oklahoma, so he went 3 years there, was running out of money, so he had to give that up for a while, but some other relatives in Norfolk invited him to come over and live with them, and he finished his undergraduate work at ODU. So, you know, we've got a guy here who really has something on the ball, I think. And while he was in Oklahoma, he was invited to attend a regressive hypnosis session, which blew his mind open. He'd never heard of that sort of thing anyway. And what he saw there was definitive proof for him that it was really true, because the person who was getting the session mentioned things that were impossible, absolutely impossible for them to have known, which he knew. And his professors didn't like the idea of this at all in psychology, and so he went his own way after that at his own pace, and decided that there was a lot more to usefulness in psychology by going the direction that he's chosen than the conventional route of standard psychology. And so he is a regression hypnotherapist. He's president of the European organization of that. And I had a very interesting session with him myself on Friday. Me, who's not hypnotizable. And actually, he just fostered a way for me to get started, and we just kind of went with it. And every session's different, every person's different, and I just said, well, this is what's happening, so I'll tell you. And for me, it ended up being a whole connected series of dreams that had no connection before I lay down on the couch from several years ago, and led to me recognizing a solution to a number of dreams that I've had in a series, the same dream over and over with slightly different trappings, and really gave me a new sense of purpose and direction. So I'm still kind of processing that and trying to decide how it's going to lead for me, but I was so impressed with the fact that this series of recurring dreams finally came together in a way that helped me a lot, and I can now stop wondering what they're trying to tell me in a general kind of way. So we're really blessed tonight to have this presenter giving you this unique opportunity. Even though it's a small group, this is really, to me, in my intuition, when I thought about suggesting that we bring him out here, something I knew that this group would really get a lot out of, and could lend some mental and spiritual energy to the story. And maybe that will actually change the timeline and change the event that occurred in the year 3900 and something. So without any more talking on my part, let's get Nassos up here. That's his name to be used among friends, and we're all friends. So welcome, Nassos.
Thank you very much.
And he does have a book here called rapid entry attachment release, which has to do with various possessions or attachments of spirits that people have, and a way of releasing those. So if you're interested in that book, it's up here. And also, he has, these are available online, and he was the executive producer of this, Why Regression Therapy, which gives a rationale for why people can benefit from being regressed and experiencing situations from past lives and help get them healed in this lifetime. So phobias and all sorts of other things that hold us back can be released, and we can get on with our lives and not worry about those kinds of things anymore. Is that right? Okay.
He's taking 10%. Okay, so thank you very much, Francis. That was very, very honorable. For me, it's an honor to be here with you. And it's a lovely place. And the people here are very warm, and I hope you enjoy that and those 2 hours that we are going to share together. Yes, I think we should do that. Now, since we are a small group, I will not go exactly by the clock, and I don't want to feel the pressure of time killing me, you know, because when last week in the ARE I was really anxious to get it done. Because this little book we are going to talk about is this. Okay. And to summarize such a book in only 2 hours, it takes a lot of work. Okay. So I will try to, through the slides, you will see a lot of interesting things that will help you with this work. So, the title of the book is Rosendahl in German. Does anybody speak German here? A bit, okay. It means the Rose Valley. And it was written by Paul Amadeus Dienach, a Swiss guy. We will talk about him in a while. It was translated by Professor George Papahadzis, and it's presented in the English language this year by me. Actually, the world first was last Saturday. So, I have to make a parenthesis before we go to the story, because I always wonder how much energy and money has been spent on books and films about the end of the world. You remember all these people, 1999 is coming and we are going to, the end of the world is coming here, thousands of books. Then it was the millennium, thousands of books. And it is this psychological feature, eschatology, you are not probably seeing well there where you are. Should we move the chair over there for you? Okay. Excuse me. Okay. Many books on Third World War, on the millennium, the Maya calendar, 2012, that was something else. 2012, the smartest guys started talking about shift in consciousness. You know, they said, well, this world as we know it will not be destroyed, but there's going to be a shift in consciousness. You know how many thousands of euros and millions of dollars have been spent on such books, and films were made out of it. Hollywood spent billions on this. Now we have 2036, you know, an asteroid is coming to hit us in 2036. In case you didn't know, I remind you, that's the next dead end. So, as you will see, the New Age shift in consciousness, the claim of the shift in consciousness, will happen. But it will happen 14 centuries from now. But you will see that in a while. Why is that? Now, before we go into any detail, the parenthesis is still here. I want one of the greatest professors of the father of American psychology, William James, wrote this back in the early 1900s. Round about the accredited and orderly facts of every science, there ever floats a sort of dust cloud of exceptional observations, of occurrences minute and irregular and seldom met with, which always proves more easy to ignore than to attend to. Anyone will renovate his science who will steadily look after the irregular phenomena. And when the science is renewed, its new formulas often have more of the voice of exceptions in them than of what were supposed to be the rules. So, precisely because this case is the only case in the world that I will present to you, it is a very exceptional case, and we have to look into this and analyze it. Now, I don't know why this is not working correctly today, but we will fix it. So I'm going to just mention a few things about the physics of time and space, specifically about the paradox of time. So my question is not mine. All philosophers throughout the centuries are always asking such questions. Is time an illusion? Do all things manifest contemporarily? What about internalism and presentism? You know, there are two tendencies now. They are philosophers now are trying to interpret what the physicists are bringing up. And so there is a big debate of whether we are living it at the present, so past and future are totally irrelevant, or we are living, everything is done at the same time. So actually we are living in an eternal now. Time is extended, in other words. So the question the eternalists pose to the presentists is, how much time does go by in an hour? How much time goes by in an hour? Have you ever thought of this? Well, the usual answer is a second per second. But okay, what is a second per second? I mean, can you divide time? Okay, suppose time, we had a meter to measure time, okay? And we divided, and we divided, and we divided, and we divided. Where does that end? Is it ending anywhere? We don't know. No one knows what time is. So there is not a precise definition of what time is. According to eternalists, future events are as immutably fixed and impossible to change as past events. So there goes the freedom of choice, according to them. Okay? You don't have to accept what I'm saying right now. It's just to get the discussion going in our mind. So, I don't know why this is not functioning correctly. So, you know, there have been breaks in the past of the fabric of time. And some people have the ability to look through time and actually, like seers, like clairvoyants, they saw things that then came true. We all know the Odyssey and the Iliad and the Argonauts and the Bible and the Quran, and everything is mentioning those people who have been being able to see through the future. Excuse me, because I'm thinking many times this is not working correctly, and I guess I have to change batteries. If we have 3A batteries, that would be great.
3 of them?
Two 3A batteries, two small ones. In the modern times, we have, you know, Nostradamus, very well known. He had the ability, at his time, he foresaw the death of King Henry VIII, I think it was, who was killed with a very specific way. And he had seen that in a vision of his, and he has said that, he had written that down. And when the king was killed that way, he became very famous. That's why he became famous, because he was very successful when he figured out these things. Then it was Swedenborg, Emanuel Swedenborg in Sweden, who also had the ability to see things. And he saw, while he was in a city in Sweden, he saw the fire, a very destructive fire, in a vision that was taking place, that took place in, I don't remember the city now, I think it was the capital of Sweden. And that was also very shocking. And it was because of this that people knew him. Jacob Lobrer, a German guy who was like Edgar Casey actually. He had a lot of readings at the time, and Jacob Lobrer actually has very many books out on him, but unfortunately I think most of them are in German. We don't have any. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So,
Want the lights on?
no, it's okay. I've got it.
Thank you. And excuse me. I hope that's it. So, as I was saying, Edgar Casey, you all know him. Okay, I'm not gonna. Teresa Neumann, another lady from Germany in Europe. She lived up to 1965. She also had visions of the future. Carl Jung had visions of the future as well. Huh? Now, we are talking about the visionaries, the people so far that had the ability to open a window, a crack, and look through time into the future. And some of them were very successful. However, here we have some parapsychological attitudes that are usually studied by specific laboratories. And of course, the more common ESP phenomena that are studied are telepathy, which is the direct mind-to-mind communication. Okay? I'm thinking about George, and I walk up the street, and there is George. I haven't seen him in a year, and suddenly I think of him, and after 2 minutes I see him in front of me. That's direct mind-to-mind communication. Clairvoyance, the ability to get information from the environment into our mind and have the ability to see something happening, either in our family or sometimes it's not our family, but a disaster like an airplane falling down or a ship sinking. We have very many credible accounts of people who had seen accidents happening before they happened. Then we have remote viewing. It is the intentional clairvoyance. It's the ability to focus away from your mind and direct your awareness somewhere else so you can see things. Remote viewing was used actually, by CIA back in the 70s. They did a lot of such experiments. Then we have, of course, precognition. A lot of people have precognitive dreams. They see something in their dream, they wake up, they remember that it is a dream, they write it down sometimes, and then it happens precisely as they have seen it. So what happened? I mean, it happened to me twice when I was a youngster, and that dream so much shocked me at the time that I said, that cannot be. How could I see something that happened? I remembered it in the morning, and how it happened 12 hours later. How could I see that? Did I fly into the future? Is that possible? So, is everything predetermined? Psychokinesis. That's another phenomenon that all these labs are studying, the ability of mind to overact over matter, to change matter. People like Uri Geller, for instance, some people, they think that he is a crook, and probably, you know, he made a lot of money out of this work that he has done, but when they put him in Stanford, under the most extreme conditions, he made this happen. In Cambridge, in England, and also in Stanford. So 2 laboratories verified his abilities, way back in the 70s. Now, we have, though, very rare phenomena, which are not, they're impossible to study, because they just happen out of the blue, and there's no way for us to control this phenomena. One of them is the phenomenon of bilocation. There are people that have been witnessed and seen in 2 different locations at the same time. We have such statements about Empedocles in ancient Greece, Pythagoras, Apollonius of Tyana. In antiquity, a lot of such remarks have been written down about these guys. We have the Vardgård phenomenon. This is a Norwegian word, and it is about an apparition that is an announcing apparition. So we see Francis coming in, and he's opening the door and comes in, but he's a bit cool, you know, he's not the usual Francis. He walks in, he goes by, and then the real Francis comes in, and you get shocked. We have many such reports by credible people, and usually they are scientists who cannot believe that this is happening to them. This is the Doppelganger, this is a German word of the etheric double, okay? And finally, we have time slips and time faults. Of course, we also have the soul survival hypothesis, but that is another lecture altogether. I'm not going to mention soul survival for the moment, that's usually what I do, but this is a totally different thing. So a time slip is the ability of me, physically, slip in another place in time. Okay? So now you will see a small, it's the ability of me to travel through time and go physically in another place, okay? And the question is, if this has happened, and how many times it has happened, and what happens when we fall in a time loop. So here we will see what happens when we fall into a time loop. Uh-oh. See, it skipped that. There is something wrong today with my thing here. Excuse me. Okay, here we are. There we go. So please see this before we go.
But first, have you ever checked your watch and found you've lost a whole chunk of time? Or tried to find a place you remembered only to discover it doesn't exist? Well, tonight we have a story of 3 families who were convinced that for a few hours they'd travelled back in time. Paranormal investigators have a name for this. They call it time slip.
Excuse me, probably there are a lot of windows open, and that's probably what's happening. So let's get them out of the way. So we have less RAM occupied. Because when we tested that, everything was working fine. So I assume that that is the problem.
It's all this energy.
Oh yes, a lot of psychic people around here. Some people are actually showing us their psychokinetic abilities, and we can see them. So I think now we are far better. Yeah. Where is it? There we are. Yeah. From current slide. There we are. Yeah.
But first, have you ever checked your watch and found you've lost a whole chunk of time? Or tried to find a place you remembered only to discover it doesn't exist? Well, tonight we have a story of 3 families who were convinced that for a few hours they'd travelled back in time. Paranormal investigators have a name for this. They call it time slip. Reports of time slip are rare, but it has a well-established pedigree. The first book on the subject was written over 80 years ago. It does sound unlikely, but as Sherlock Holmes once said, when you've eliminated all the alternatives, then whatever remains must be the truth, however improbable. Equally strange is the story of Cynthia and Len Gisby.
Hello to see you.
Pauline, hello.
They invited friends Pauline and Jeff Simpson to join them on a holiday in Spain. They set out to drive through France in the late summer of 1979. It was their first experience of life on the other side of the Channel, and it was to prove an unforgettable one.
We've been travelling from about 10 o'clock in the morning. It's getting 8 o'clock at night. And we started looking out for a motel, anything.
And we thought, well, that looks an ideal place. A very old world place it was. Hey, what have we got here?
Oh, isn't this quaint? This'll do nicely.
I'll get the luggage. Bonjour, Mr. Dern. Je peux vous aider?
Avez-vous deux chambres for 3?
Ah, oui, on a 2 chambres pour 4 personnes, là-haut, pour dormir. Entrez, s'il vous plaît.
It was not a very large dining room. There was about half a dozen or 7 tables with a little white cloth on.
Et voilà votre chambre, messieurs, dames. Soyez confortables.
The bed was very tall with a big brown furry cover on it. And when we pulled it back, there was a feather mattress with a sheet cover, and it was very hard calico type linen.
It's a bit chilly in here, love. Did you close the window?
See, you're not going to believe this. There's no glass in the window.
What?
There were just one opening in the wall. There were no glass in the windows at all. All you would do was 2 shutters you pulled in from the outside.
That meal was formidable. You won't find food like that on a motorway service station.
Oh, cutlery like this. Maybe it was made locally.
And the beer?
I've never tasted anything like it before. Still, I couldn't let it go to waste now, could I?
We just thought it was old rural France and had a laugh at it all. We thought it was all part and parcel of the holiday, quite funny.
We did enjoy it, but we did enjoy the food though, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. It was lovely. We were so hungry.
Sam, come in, Pauline, love. Slept well then? Yeah. The boys want to take a photograph with us. Oh, fame at last. Smile. The gorgeous girls are here.
Bonjour, Albert.
While we were at breakfast, these 2 gendarmes came in. The thing that puzzled me more than anything was the uniforms of the gendarmes. I've never seen uniforms like that at all. I think they must have been regular customers coming in for their cognac and coffee in the mornings.
While we were having breakfast, a woman came in with a mauve dress on. She looked as though she'd been to a dance, very old-fashioned type.
It just said they'd been to an all-night party.
She looked very old-fashioned.
Okay, Jeff, if you take the bags out, I'll pay the bill. The bill, how much? Paye, s'il vous plaît.
Un instant.
Pardon?
I asked the policeman if there was a road or another exit onto the autoroute.
Autoroute? Qu'est-ce que c'est l'autoroute?
Motorway? Autoroute? Was it Avignon?
Ah, mais oui, maintenant je comprends.
They had no idea what an autoroute was, from my opinion anyway. Hadn't got a clue, so we thought that was rather funny.
Monsieur, l'addition, s'il vous plaît.
Oh, right.
dîner, le petit déjeuner. Oui, et pour 4 personnes, hein? Alors ça fait 2, 4, 9, 19.
Hey, Jeff, you'll never believe this. It was only 19 francs.
What, breakfast?
No, the whole lot.
Blake came back and said, "It's only 19 francs." I said, "Get off, come on, let's go." And we went.
They were so impressed by the hotel, they decided to stay there again on the way back to England.
Are you sure you're on the right road?
I'm sure it was down this road. We turned right at the bridge. It was a right road, there's no doubt about it. Not in my mind, it was a right road. We went backwards and forwards 4 times and we couldn't find it. I'm positive it was here.
Come on, let's go.
We gave up after about 4 manoeuvres up and down the road.
The next one cost us 247 francs. Just a sandwich.
The next surprise came back in England when the two couples had their photos developed.
I just don't understand it, Jeff. Those photos we took at the hotel, they haven't come out. Here, take a look. They were the last shots before we went to Spain, weren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Pauline. We've just got our holiday photos back. Oh, good. Could you check something for me? You definitely took those photos, didn't you?
Of course I did. I knew I'd taken a photograph and I'd seen Len take 2 photographs. I knew I should have had it on the roll of film that was developed. It wasn't there.
You'll never guess. The strangest thing has happened.
When Len's never come out, I was really surprised, shocked.
It was as though we hadn't taken them at all. Just weren't there, and there was no signs of them having been there.
The shock of the missing photographs spurred the Gisbys to carry out their own research. They discovered the gendarme's uniform and the dress worn by the woman, dated from the 1900s. It's almost as if the two couples had travelled back in time. But why did no one comment on their car? And how did they pay the bill with modern money?
With the modern currency, he accepted it. And that was it. I mean, it's always puzzled me.
Strangely enough, bed, breakfast and evening meal for 4 would have cost just 19 francs at the turn of the century. And Len Gisby, for one, is willing to believe the impossible.
The only thing I could think of with all the dates corresponding is that we went into a time lapse. We went back in time.
Cynthia and Len and Pauline and Jeff did return to France a few years ago to search for the rustic hotel where they'd seen 2 policemen in their antiquated uniforms. And in the end they found the right road. But all the trees were much taller than they remembered. And tantalizingly, where the hotel had stood, they found the crumbling ruins of an old building. None of the locals could remember if it had ever been a hotel. But they did say the building next door had once been the village police station around the turn of the century.
So, I guess you already are freaked out with this. It's not the first time that happened, of course. There was a fascinating story written by 2 ladies who were schoolmasters in England, and they visited the Petit Trianon in Versailles in France, in Paris, and they wrote an excellent book in 1901 about their experience. Actually, they slipped back in time, and they slipped when it was in 1901. The book was written in 1901, but the experience was right at the end of the former century, 19th century, and they slipped there and they saw Marie Antoinette in her nice dresses walking around, and they were really shocked because when they went there the other day, everything was arranged different and all the gardens were different. So that really estranged them, and they were so strange that they went back and found the original designs of the gardens, and they figured out that that was about the time when Maria Antoinette was alive, the structure of the gardens. So a client of mine also said about her experience of time sleep. She had, in Cyprus, she had gone there with her friend of hers, and they had just arrived from the airport, and they were really tired, but they strolled along the beach there, and they saw a wonderful piano restaurant, and they heard the piano there playing, and they said, oh, what a nice place to go and sit. But they were really tired and they wanted to take a shower, so they said, let's go back to the hotel and we'll see into that later. But when they took the shower, they fell asleep, so they went the next day. The next day, they went there and it was a tourist shop there, and not the piano bar. So they are estranged. They say, what's happening here? And then they move next and they go to the pizza place and they ask, we passed yesterday here and there was a piano bar. And the guy goes crazy and he turns pale and he says, wait a minute, there was a piano bar here, but 3 years ago it closed down and it moved to Nicosia. It's not here anymore. How could you yesterday be here listening to the piano guy? So they were so shocked, because it was not one witness. You know, when you are on your own, you really go crazy. But when two people go crazy together, and 4 people in our case here, it's something rather peculiar. So, but this kind of time travel is actually, these people physically went into another universe, another particular spot of time, and they entered that there physically. Okay? We have some cases, all the cases in the literature are about 20 that have been reported of such cases, but we have about 20. So you only need one, as William James was saying, you only need one white crown to disprove the theory that all crowns are black. Just bring one white and then we'll accept it. So this is one white crown that I just showed you. Now, the thing with our story now, and parenthesis closed, is that this is a unique case. It has never happened before. There is nothing like this in the paranormal literature. I have provoked anybody to bring out such a case. And you will discover right now why this case is so peculiar. Now, Paul Amadeus Dienach is our main character, and he was born in the countryside of Switzerland in 1884 in a German-speaking family. When young, he moved to Zurich. He became a school teacher. His first love, Anna, was forcefully married to a wealthy man and died 2 years after her marriage from tuberculosis in 1909. In 1917, he had a fit of narcolepsy for 14 days. Narcolepsy is somebody slips into a coma and sleeps all the time and does not have any awareness or consciousness. Okay? In May of 1921, though, he had another such fit, which lasted for 360 days. When he woke up in May of 1922, his mother had died and he had no close relatives anymore because he was orphaned by the father. And so when he woke up, he was all alone and nobody was there to care for him. Okay? Then he sold some of his property and he decided that he should move to Greece because the weather in Greece is better than Switzerland, so that he would feel better. The doctors advised him to go to a warmer climate for him to recover. So he moved to Athens and stayed close to the Acropolis. He offered language lessons to young students in German and French. He then started writing his diaries about the images that came up during his narcoleptic fit. Now, when he woke up, he had memories, unbelievable memories. And so he decided that when he was in Greece, he would write them down. In 1924, he left off from Greece to die of tuberculosis, but at the same time, he entrusted all his diaries, 4 in total, to George Papachadzis. He just gave him the papers, he told him, take them, I'm going to die. That's it. He didn't ask him to do anything. Now, his writing is so obsessively romantic and full of lyricism that it makes a very difficult reading. The truth is that this book is a love story. Okay? It is a love story you will realize in a while. But I'm not going to focus on the love parts, believe me. So, now, Professor George Papachadzis. Now, when he was a student at the University of Athens, he had private lessons in the German language with Dienach, with our prime actor here. He saw something very deep and strange in his eye look and behavior that tantalized him. In 1924, he was given the 4 manuscripts in German. 2 of them were his diaries from Switzerland, and 2 of them the diaries of his memories from the future, rewritten in Athens. Ask me at the end of the first part why I say rewritten. Mr. Papachadzis started translating those diaries in 1926, and he concluded the translation in 1940. He published them for the first time in 1966 in 1,000 copies. He was then the Dean of the Panteion University of Athens and the Vice President of the Council of State, like the Supreme Court. Okay? He was at the top of his career, at his 60s, late 60s, when he decided to publish this book in 1,000 copies only. Okay? And the reason it was that he saw events happening that were written in the book, so he finally was convinced that this has to be published. And of course he was at the top of his career, nobody would kick him out of as a dean. Huh? Well, that was what he thought. Next year he was brought down, but not because of this, because we had a dictatorship. So, one of the most spectacular stories ever written. So, our Swiss teacher, Paul Amadeus Dienach, slept in a rare state of consciousness called narcolepsy or lethargic sleep for almost a year. When he recovered, he came back with memories of another person, actually his future embodiment. I will clarify that in a while. The future personality was a physicist named Andreas Northam, who actually lived in the year between 3905 and 3906. Okay, this accident, this incident for that time period in the future was 3905 to 3906 AD, okay? 40th century. So, the physicist of the future had an accident involving a near-death experience. And when he recovered, he didn't actually recover. He had been possessed by the personality of our 20th century teacher. Or actually his former persona, his own former persona. What we are to clarify things, because that's the difficult part. If you understand that, we have seen in literature, in the possession literature, that some people are possessed not only by another spirit or a demon, but they can be possessed by a former, previous personality of their own incarnations. In other words, but that is never total, and it never lasts for a long time. It's a partial possession. So sometimes an accident, let's say, or a very traumatic experience may trigger an event that brings out a former persona to take over the body of a person. Okay? When that happens, there needs therapy to take place so that that persona subsides and is integrated with the original persona. Do you follow me, or am I?
Yeah, we got it.
Thank you. So, because I know these things are a bit tricky. So, now, this guy has been totally possessed, the future guy, the physicist, Andreas Northam, is totally possessed. His personality is suppressed totally, it is not anywhere anymore, and it is totally possessed and taken over by the former persona. His former persona was our teacher, the Swiss teacher, Paul. So, what happened now in the future? Andreas Northam is driving a Lincoln. Okay, whenever you see now orange, you see here the orange? These are new terms. We do not know these terms now. These are terms of the future. So whenever I introduce a new term, I have a new column. Okay? So, a Lincoln is an individual flying machine, and as he was driving this, he crashed and he temporarily died. He died actually for 15 minutes. During his transfers to the Molson hospital, he was immediately frozen before the resuscitation team finally brought him back to life. In that way, no brain damage occurred. Now, why am I stressing, am I emphasizing here the immediately frozen thing? Why? A book was written this year, 2013, by son Panya. Dr. Panya is a cardiologist, and he's a resuscitation expert. And what he said in his book is that they found people that were dead in the streets for hours, and they made efforts to resuscitate them, and they became well, and they didn't have brain damage, or the tissues were not destroyed. And they wouldn't figure out why. The reason why this was happening was because they were frozen in the snow in one case, and another case it was just cold weather. So they said, what if we make a mold, frozen mold, and whenever somebody is in such a situation, we immediately put the mold around his head so that he cools down, so that the brain cells don't die in 3 minutes, as they usually die in 3 minutes. So now, I was rereading this book, you know, again and again now to present it. So this time, after I read the book, I realized that these guys there know already of this technique, which was only discovered 3 years ago. Not in 1922, but he's writing these things. Okay? So that's why I mentioned this. So there was no brain damage, but of course, there was no brain damage, but there was a personality change. So when he wakes up, this guy sees a very strange environment around him, and he's saying, what is this? Why is everything so big and so full of light, and why people are dressed like this? I've never seen people like this. So he's in a deep shock when he opens his eyes. So the loved ones say, oh, he opened his eyes, here it is, but actually he can see only their joy because he doesn't understand what they are talking about. He understands that this is a very harsh language, a very different than his language, and he suspects that that must be a Scandinavian language, but he is not sure what the language it is. And these people are talking to him, welcome Andreas, how are you Andreas, and all this, and he's not responding. What are these? What are these strangers? Who is looking here? So, during recovery, he stands up and he goes to the mirror. And when he looks at the mirror, he sees another person. And he gets in a total state of shock, and he starts praying to God and saying, oh my goodness, what is happening to me? Am I crazy? Am I that? If you read that, you know, how he writes it, the shock that he had. when he saw him, another person, it's as if, you know, I'm looking in the mirror and I see Francis instead of seeing me. And what is going on here? It's amazing. So, then, as I told you, he spoke, but no one seemed to understand what he was talking about. So they brought in specialized linguists to make a dialogue with him so that they can understand what is said. And what they understood is that he must have been speaking an archaic Germanic language. Okay? Now, what are his symptoms? First of all, as I said, he cannot recognize any of his loved ones, speaks a foreign tongue that nobody comprehends. He suffers from another ailment, though. He never sleeps. He never falls into sleep. Never. He's always awake. So while the body of our 20th century guy, the Swiss teacher, is constantly asleep for a whole year, this guy is constantly awake in the future. The physicians of the future examine him thoroughly but cannot explain the phenomenon, and they think it is a consequence of his 15-minute death. And they assume also that what he is expressing is a very rare form of xenoglossy, which is actually, you know what xenoglossy is the ability of speaking a foreign language without having ever been taught this language. You know how difficult it is to learn foreign language. It has all kinds of tricks that you have to use in order to speak a foreign language. It's not just to recite the foreign language. So they thought it was a form of xenoglossy. Now, while in the recovery process, his good friends are brought in, but he recognizes none. Stefan, his best friend from early childhood, is nothing but a stranger for him. Dr. Geiger, his professor and mentor from childhood, is also not recognized. So when they cannot understand what is he talking about, they ask him to write down his thoughts. So he starts writing down. And Stefan, his best friend, recognizes that the handwriting is not his friend's handwriting. So after his physical recovery, when he gets out of the Molson hospital, he's taken to a resort in northern Italy near the lake Como by Stefan and Geiger. There they realize that this man is indeed a personality from the 20th century, and they try to teach him what has happened in those 20 centuries. How do they teach them? They teach them through their Eigenswege. Eigenswege are special three-dimensional holographic chambers that are usually used as the basic means of teaching history. But they also had analogous book versions for home use and for handicapped persons who would not be able to go to these places, to these chambers. Now, Eigenswege are named that because these guys are the inventors. Reigen, the last name, Reigen and Zwage. Two guys, they discovered this, and in their memory, they call them Reigen and Zwage. Okay? Now, of course I said that this is a love story, but I'm not going to spend much time for the love story. In essence, this book is describing the devotion and love to his adolescent love, Anna. The last time he met her in the secret place close by their village, close to a lake, they exchanged promises of eternal love and dedication. They were young. He was 20, she was 18 or something, and you know, they promised that they would marry and they would have children together in a family. So that was their dream. But when Anna went home and she expressed that feeling that she likes Paul, they got really upset with her, and her father said, "There's no way you're going to marry this guy who is a wealthy guy. Forget about the other guy, he's just a teacher, you're never going to eat food with the teacher. So she was, as I told you, married to this guy, and then, of course, she died. After 2 years, she got married of tuberculosis. She gave birth to a child, and then she died. But when Dienach met Sylvia in the 40th century, he recognized that she was the incarnation of Anna. Because when they didn't look like each other, of course, one was blonde, the other one was dark-haired, but he could see through her eyes Anna. Okay? So it was then that they fell in love and concluded what had not been concluded in the 20th century. So make sure, now you are all older than, but make sure, don't promise do you want a person so much, because this may happen to you, okay? You may fulfill your wish. So, let's turn our attention to what concerns us most, and it is, of course, what happened in our times and in the course of time. So let's see about 20th and 21st centuries. The dominance of the European continent falls apart, and after World War I, the Americans gradually take over. Emphasis is now given not in spiritual or intellectual matters, but rather on technological and economic development, with massive production of products and an influence unprecedented in history. And while the standard of living is greatly improved, the cultural improvements are conversely proportional. Low quality mass productions for the masses are distributed. Classic education is abandoned in favor of technical and practical training. During this dehumanizing period of the era of mechanization, the way of treating workers, even supervisors and managers, was degrading and inhumane. These people were always under pressure in a real frenzy, led some people to psychic and mental diseases that even led to suicide. I have to remind you what happened a few years ago in Shanghai when they were making those iPhones and they were pressured a lot of people started jumping out of the windows of skyscrapers, killing themselves down at the streets. And what did the Golden Boys do? What did they decide that they have to do? Put nets around their buildings. That's the way they solved the problem. They didn't reduce the pressure on the workers. They did not do anything. They just put nets around the building so that if one attempted, they would be trapped in the net. So I guess he's a bit right. Now, in that era of the New World Order, I'm saying New World Order, I think New World Order is a George Bush administration term. It's not a term that was used in 1922, okay? So he didn't make that up. But the historians of that time are talking about the New World Order. And what they say is this: those totalitarian states were fighting over which tendency would govern, the right or the left, in terms of social conditions and social policies. So for them, American democracy or European democracies are totalitarian systems. And you will understand why they say that in a while. Now, the people that were valued in this time were not Goethe, Da Vinci, Dante, Pasteur, Einstein, Edison, Tesla, or all these great minds and spirits, but they were other newly introduced idols, all these celebrities. So this is from the book now, as it is. People that were worshipped at the time were comedians, dancers, boxers, soccer players, ruthless Croesuses, escorts, enragged, unclean, unkept, scruffy instrument players. How could this guy, in 1922, have predicted or seen or described this, nobody would have ever, even in the 50s, have predicted such a thing. Okay? So in the human agent, these people could only see numbers, productivity, power, and profit. Those are the basis of the economy of today, according to the historians of that time. Their view of the world was anthropocentric, geocentric, and had no value for the other living creatures. Now this is the interesting part. This is the first particular date we have in this book, 2204 AD. Humans managed to migrate on Mars. Now, this guy is writing this diary in 1922, 23, and he concluded in 24. Von Braun had not discovered the rocket yet. Sputnik was not around the Earth, Apollo program was not around, nothing of this kind was around. Now you all know that the cockroaches are up there, Mars. And bacteria and all this, they were sent in the last mission that landed there, released those things to see what will happen in the system. So humans in almost like 190 years from now, they managed to build settlements and colonies on the planet. They managed to create the conditions for a bearable living. But the temporary taming of natural forces lasted only for 60 years. In 2265 AD, a terrible physical disaster took place that lasted for months and killed 20 million people. Only a few hundred made it back to Earth to share the story. Now please, take a picture of this, if you have a camera with you, and frame it, and say to your grandchildren to give that frame to their grandchildren, and so on, so that they will never, ever go there.
To Mars.
That's a good idea.
First, you know, now there's a one-way ticket with no return. I mean, in 2035, you pay a lot of money, you go there, but you never come back. If you want to have an expensive way of suiciding, that is a good way to do it. Yeah, you can take a picture, yes. Yeah, why not? So, this is the first concrete date we have. Okay? Now, we know that now NASA and ESA and the Chinese and the Russians are saying, and actually they are all together in this project, that sooner or later, in about 100 years from now, probably some people will start traveling over there and coming back from 100 years from now. So you can imagine that in order for 20 million people to be there, they have built colonies. Okay? So we go now to the hard things. Of course, we remember in the 70s especially, we were all talking about the overpopulation thing, and you know how much the overpopulation has grown. I mean, we were in 1970, I think we were 4 billion, and now we are above 7 billion. We almost doubled in 40 years. And you know how the equation is going up, but now we seem to moderate the problem, and we think that we are overcoming it. But actually, that is not the case. What will happen is tremendous. The scientists of the time, now the historians are saying about our times, that the scientists of the time did not foresee the time bomb of overpopulation. Authorities did not restrict in time cultures and people from refraining from child upbringing. Catholic and Protestant churches did not help to this direction. And suddenly, as if a flood took place, the situation got out of hand. Conditions were constantly deteriorating, and there were upheavals, wars, uprisings, overthrows. Was a tremendous condition that was, deteriorating. The life conditions were unbearable for the majority of people, for 90% of the population. So, as we were moving into the 23rd century, the white people demanded from the colored and the Chinese to restrain themselves. They, on the other hand, were defending themselves by claiming that they were mostly the victims. So the overpopulation had brought years and years of hunger and terrible conditions. And then a series of wars started, in which most of the time the whites dominated because they had superior weapons, but the millions of dead people would not suffice to reduce the constantly growing population. So even though they were killing themselves all the time, the pressure of the population was so big that then the inevitable happened, the unavoidable, the time when the world as we know it came to an end. And now that's the eschatology here. 2309. There was a thermonuclear controlled attack which destroyed most of Europe as we know it and all of the world. The only parts of the world that were unaffected by this extermination were the Scandinavian and Baltic countries. You know, Baltic countries are actually the northern countries, Estonia, Lithuania, Lithuania, these are Finland, and of course the Slavs, the Russians, these people survived, and the Scandinavians. All the rest, Europe as we know it, there is no Rome, there is no Florence, no Vatican, no Venice, no Paris, there is nothing left. Everything is wiped out. Billions and billions of people died and devastated most of the continents of the earth. So now, after that took place, in 2320, from 2320 to 2350, people start to migrate from the north to take over the old lands, and they start moving to the south. Now, it's important to note here that these wars were not state wars. It was not America fighting Russia, it was not Germany fighting France. It was racial wars. The whites fighting the blacks, and the whites fighting the Chinese, and the colored. So probably colored are also the Indians, the Pakistanis and all these. So they were wiped out. And he mentions there that what he saw in terms of variety of people had nothing to do with what was the variety of people in the 20th century. Actually, they were more homogenized. Okay? At that time, they started setting the grounds for a new beginning. So in 2394, they established the European Constituent Assembly. People gathered there, and they said, we have to sort things out, we have to finish with this, this cannot go on, we have to set new rules of the game. So after that, 1 year after that, worldwide Constituent Assembly takes place, and in the year of 2396, establishment of the global Rechtsstaat, that's how they call it, Rechtsstaat. It's the Commonwealth with law and order, and it's called end of prehistory and beginning of the new calendar. And year 1 is established. They think that this is a barbarian era. We have to get over this. We have to scrape everything and start from scratch, and we will never accept again this to happen. So all this was considered prehistoric times for them. They are considered barbaric because they are based their civilization in greed, profit, and private property. These things will never exist again. If you want to have happiness on this planet, they decided that we have to get rid of that. Now I know how anti-American is this. It's not in your mentality, but it's a story. You take it and you do whatever you want with it. Responsible for this shift in perspective is a charismatic political leader called John Turing. An unknown person to us right now, but we can keep down the note. His vision to terminate human conflict and set the grounds for a peaceful era is finally becoming true. That era is now called Pax Ecumenica Terringa. The language spoken hereafter is a mixture of Anglo-Saxon and Scandinavian. Now, this is end of part 1, and before I proceed, you can either, we can have a break or you can ask me questions, whatever you like, before I proceed. We can have a break if you choose, just a shake, or you can ask me questions so far. Let's stretch, okay?
Holy mackerel. This stuff is really going to hit the fan, isn't it?
Anybody want a bottle of water?
That's good.
That's okay, we're fine.
That's good.
You want that one on?
If you want, I don't mind. No, it's if it's it depends. So, as I said a while ago, they changed the calendar in 2396. So from there on, in the 40th century now, they have separated their time in the old era, Eldrere is actually old era, and Neugere, new era. So they have separated in their time, they have the old era. Prehistory is us, okay? Is us up to the thermonuclear thing and the Constitution. From there on, it's the old era and the new era. Now, year number 1 is 2396 AD. The new calendar starts on the fall equinox and has a Latin counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, but with a Latin counting. And each month has 30 days, and there are no week divisions or the concept of Sundays. There's not a 7-day week or Sundays. It's 365 days, and I will tell you, there actually, if you see 30 by times 12 is 360. The 5 days are actually days of worship that are taking place in the future. I will explain that. So, yes, I did not explain another thing. Yes, I did not explain why the diaries were rewritten. If you saw in the slide, I said these diaries are rewritten in Greece. When this guy, Paul Amadeus Dienach, is in Greece, he rewrites the diaries. Why he rewrites them? Because when he was there, he was constantly awake, as you remember. So he was writing down the diary. And he kept a diary of all this information that he was learning in the Regenswages, in those chambers with holographic things. Okay? He was learning things through there. And he was writing them down. So he kept a very good diary. So when he woke up in Switzerland and then came to Greece, he rewrote what he remembered and he could recall from his first diary. So actually, we have this diary here, and there probably might be the same diary in the future. Somebody may have already published this in the future. So maybe these two together, sometimes they meet. That would be an interesting paradox. Huh? So, now, coming back to the calendar, this is the year 498 is the the movement of the 200 and the building of Roosendaal. Roosendaal is actually their capital. There are states, but they are not as important now. It's mostly the cities that are important. And Roosendaal is a city somewhere in southeastern Europe.
Are there countries?
There are countries, yes, but they have no, they're not like they are today. They don't have military, they don't have a judicial system, they don't have a political system. They just have an area. And they say here is the state of Israel, by the way. He mentions the state of Israel. You know when Israel was?
Wow.
1946.
Yeah.
He was long dead. And he's saying that the state of Israel will be 100 million people. Now there are 6 million, I think, or 3, I don't remember. It's a very small number, actually. They are going to be 100 million, 20 million in the future, but most of them will be Christianized. They are not going to be Jews anymore. They are going, most of them will be Christianized. He says, how could he know a state of Israel in 22? They did not exist. So, you know, things come into my mind all the time because those are not written in there. So, now this movement of the 200 are 200 people now that they decide that they had enough with what is going on socially speaking, and they want to retreat, to go away, to come to Bracy, Virginia.
That would be going away.
Yes, and they want to devote themselves into the development of human consciousness. They know that the brain is underworking, that it's working less than 1% of its capabilities. And they want to devote themselves, and they create institutes for this. The first institute that was created was the Anderson Institute. We will talk about it later. So they devoted themselves in the development of the human consciousness, understanding the human consciousness and expanding it, overextending it from its limitations. They wanted to overcome the limitations of the brain, so to say. So now in the new era, why is it called New Era? Because in 1986, their time, 3382, in 12 centuries from now, almost 13 centuries from now, there happens the miracle. Volky's breakthrough. Alexis Volky, a descendant of the 200, he makes a breakthrough. It's called the Oversinsans. The people are now considered to have entered into the new era of the consensus gentium universalis. So, in other words, his ability to oversee things beyond the senses, beyond our limitation of the senses, is what caused him to change the era. So that's the new era when people have developed their new abilities. And in 1086, 100 years after that, the blue roses blossom at the Roosendaal by Rundulov. This is considered the breakthrough because they are sky blue, fluorescent roses. The people see them and they go crazy about it. And that, I will expand on this later. Now, as I told you, our Andreas Northam, the guy from the future, the physicist, is taken by his best friend and his professor to Italy. Okay? Now, Italy, on the west coast of Italy, all of it is built with Kivesheims and Kives hostels. Okay? Thousands and thousands and thousands of hotels along the whole coastline of Italy are all the way down to Sicily. Now, Those are the hotels for all the civilians that have concluded their duty service for the state. The duty service is actually a mandatory employment for all youngsters from 17 to 19 years of age. They are called Jezels, which means partners. They work 2 years. And what after that? They retire. Now, of course, it was not always like that. People were you were working for 40 years, especially in the old era, they were building the infrastructure, okay? So it took many years and a lot of work to build all this infrastructure and solve the energy problem. And after they did that, they started reducing the duty. And the duty was reduced to 20 years, then to 10 years, then to 5 years, and that time now, in the 40th century, it's only 2 years, okay? So they work wherever there is a need for them to work, usually in the Glothners. Glothners are humongous energy plants, which usually use nuclear reactors. In 1924, there was no such a thing as nuclear fission or nuclear fusion. This guy is talking about nuclear plants that are actually providing the whole energy at the time. So they also know to work on the Glothners. They work in worksteads, which is work sites, you know, construction. They work in restaurants, they work in offices, they work everywhere, but wherever they work, they wear troyes, which are special uniforms, so that they can be distinguished from the kives. So we have the kives, those who have finished their duty, and the troyes, who are the workers. After that, they are called kives, and they are free to continue their life with what they wish. If they want to become a doctor at that time, they can go to the university, study, become a medical doctor, but they will never be paid for their service from their own. Okay? They want to become a historian, they want to become an artist, they are free to do whatever they want. The civils are free to enjoy life as they wish. They are free to pursue any study that they like, and from here on they have the ability to excel in what their soul desires. The kives can always be consumers of art, science, vacations, and whatever they wish. However, people who dedicate part of their time and offer services for others are considered very highly by the majority. They are not forced to, but whomever gives out his services to the people, he is considered very highly, or she, he or she. So now a few words about the economic organization. There is no private ownership. Technical achievements have mastered the abundance of energy and have assured the well-being for every human. Affluence and efficacy are enjoyed by everyone. Supply and demand are foreseen by the statistical service. There are huge, he's talking about huge machines that are actually, like computers probably, that are actually seeing what's missing from the, the shops, and they produce them again to have them there. Labor is now limited to the 2-year service and is mandatory. Everyone has access to all goods and all commodities. Now the energy. Most of the energy is supplied by the Glothners. Those are massive nuclear reactor plants that provide energy to all the planet. They also utilize massive amounts of energy from underneath the earth, and they have huge pipelines that supply Northern Europe with an unknown to us form of raw material from the Atlantic Ocean. We cannot understand what he's talking about. Probably he does not even understand. So they also utilize solar, wind, and water power wherever that is possible. But that they do it, to show how old people were doing it. They don't care about this energy. The heart of the energy production, the pump of all this production, is the continent of Australia.
Wow.
That's where all the energy is produced, mostly. And mostly of the plants are under the earth. They are subterranean. They are not over the earth. Now, food supply. While in the first few centuries of the Elder era they resort to genetically modified foods that are mostly produced through the laboratories of mass food production plants, they then resort to more traditional ways of agriculture and livestock production. So they do, they revisit, let's say, they become traditional again, and they have pasture out in the lands, and they do have traditional ways of producing food. But in the beginning, in the old era, Elder era, they were using synthetic food. They were producing synthetic food to sustain the population. So at the 40th century, there are no icebergs on the poles. And what were once the deserts and the steppes have been all cultivated and inhabited. Now, I do not know why there are no icebergs on the poles. Is it because of the greenhouse effect? We have no idea. He doesn't mention that thing. Probably it's because of this. Because if you can imagine all these billions of people in the 23rd century that were producing emissions and such things, not only the nuclear catastrophe took place, probably also the ice melted the poles. So probably that's the reason. But these people managed to, to make Sahara disappear. All the Siberian steppes are now places where they cultivate and they inhabit, and probably also he doesn't mention at all North America, Northern America.
I know, I
No
think that's so
mention
strange. I
whatsoever.
kept waiting for him to say
Yeah,
something.
no mention whatsoever about Northern America. He mentions 2 times South America, especially after the disaster. Some people there survived after the disaster, and they came over from South America to southeastern Europe. The very, very few survivors over there came up there. He doesn't mention North America in that time, because he only visited northern central and southeastern Europe. So he mentions only that area. And he never mentions anything about what happened to the US, Canada, Mexico. Nothing. Unfortunately. Communications now. Okay. He is outside. He went out to the ports and he was enjoying the beautiful sunset, that the colors of the sun are going through the leaves of the trees, and oh, how beautiful this is. And then he comes back and he watches at his phone. And his device is talking about a device through which he can see her and listen to her message. And she's talking with his beautiful lips. Oh, her eyes are so gorgeous and her hair is moving so nice. And he's so in love with her and he doesn't listen what the message says. Okay. But he's talking about a 3D device, holographic device. I'm just taking this is our technology today. He's talking about a 3D message. Okay? Transportation. The safest, fastest, and main way of transportation is done through the air. Linsons are small air vehicles for short distances, maximum 2 people on them. Dunners are huge cigar-like planes with no wings that not only host thousands of passengers and cargo, but they're Linsons as well. They fly extremely fast from continent to continent, and they even have inside them entertainment centers. So I fly with my little Linson. I go to the harbor where this diner is done. I put the Linson inside, and then I go up to the entertainment center. I have fun. There are no windows. You don't see anything because they are really fast. Okay? Now this guy, when he went to Italy and he was looking at the sky, the first days he couldn't behave well. He was like a stupid because he saw all these things flying over him and he thought they would fall down on him. And he was, every day, it took him a lot of days to stop this spontaneous reaction, to protect himself from something falling on him. from the flying scenes. Actually, it was as if he describes that he sees thousands of metal birds flying over the place, and with no sound whatsoever. They were not noisy. If you have not seen a movie on the internet, it's called Thrive. Please see it.
It's called
The
what?
technology is here now for this to happen.
It's called
They are
what?
not using it because of Thrive.
Okay, thank you.
Thrive.
Yeah.
See it, it's a 2 hours movie, it's excellent. The technology is here, it's the oil companies and the gangsters of our rulers that do not want this to take place. Okay? The technology is here and well known in this day that we are talking. So now, the classic autoroutes still exist, but they are far different from ours. They are from a half a mile wide till a mile wide. Okay? And what happens with those streets is they have lanes, and then they have lanes, forest, and they are separate. So small vehicles will go on the small things, and the big vehicles go to the others. So we have rayoses. Those are humongous, many-leveled buses that are moved by traction. And he describes them, he says, they are like a skyscraper of New York. If you cut it and you put it down, the skyscraper, it's so big. The rayosa is so big. And they have big streets of, one street he is mentioning that he took is 2,500 miles long, and it starts from Portugal, and it goes all the way to the end of Siberia. So it crosses the continent of Europe and Asia like this, and this is for the people who want to travel, you know, to enjoy things, to stop here and there. They don't want to go fast. It goes fast, but not as fast as the Danube, which is their airplane. Now, velos, the velos are small, two-wheeled vehicles like our motorbikes, but they don't make any noise, and they're relatively slow, and they go on their own lane. So if you want to go for a trip, but those they don't step down on the terrain. Actually, they are about 2 feet over the ground, and as if they are flying over it with magnetic fields. They move themselves. Yeah, there is no traction, and there are no wheels. It's about that, about 20-25 centimeters from the ground, as he describes. Now let's go sociologically speaking. Redstad is the universal commonwealth, as we said. It was established in the first year of the new era. Now, Riksdag is the representative collective assembly. Actually, all these workers are getting together, and they talk about the needs of the production lines and what is needed in technological terms, and so they exchange information, and they have that assembly taking place all the time so that they can follow up with the demand. There are no political and judicial institutions. Do you believe that there are no lawyers?
That sounds good.
No lawyers. No authority. That's even, yeah. No authoritarian power exists in the form of the government as we know it. No delinquency, deviant behavior, or criminal acts are witnessed. Would you believe that? Social control has been achieved through internalization of certain principles. Okay, so socialization is actually very effective. It seems that they have managed to stop that deviant behavior that characterizes us. So for them now, what is most important are, and he gives several names, but actually they are for the same thing. Lorfe are the officials at the top of the intellectual and spiritual leadership. Those are the leaders of intellectual and spiritual and they considered the best, the top, and they are given huge estates, bigger houses than the ones we saw here in the lake, more. It's actually the gift of the Commonwealth to them is to have better estates. Many of them do not want them. Okay? Now, then we have the electors. Again, they are intellectual and spiritual officials. The tiltes, again. Then we have the prestes cab, which are priests and clergy. The priests and clergy are also considered very highly there. Then we have the office partners, the partners that work in state offices, to help, do the work, the office work. While finally, at the end of the intellectual and at the end of the social stratification, are the parvenus. The parvenus are kives that do not engage in altruistic services. They are all for fun. They are family devoted, or they go for trips, or they visit museums, or they go to the art exhibits, or they involve themselves in theater, whatever, but they are not engaged in any way whatsoever in altruistic services.
Are they looked down on?
They are not considered highly. Yeah, they are allowed to do that. What we say today, elites and masses, well, that's their mass. Their mass is that they only have fun. But they are not looked down in the way we are looking down on our lower castes, let's say. Now, religious and spiritual practices. People are free to exercise their religious feelings as they wish. There is no limitation on this. And there are temples of most religions everywhere. I mean, he's describing about temples everywhere. In every city he's going, he sees all kinds of temples. And actually he says that there are even ancient Greek temples, that people go there, for the 12 gods. There are Egyptian and Assyrian and Babylonian ancient temples, and people worship there as well. There are congregations, there are Christian temples. So differentiations of variety do not matter in that time, because the scope of all these ancient religions was in essence the same. Fundamentally, it is the same for everyone. So they need to quench the spiritual thirst after the discovery of Nibelwich, which is clearly understood at the time. Nibelwich is that ability of the persons to oversee, to see things, to see the truth. Okay? So after they acquired the Nibelwich, they didn't need to differentiate themselves and be fundamentalist, as we say today, and differentiate themselves, the Baptist with the Methodist and so on. There was no such a thing at the time. Now, for what I can understand throughout the book, it seems that Christianity has prevailed. Even though now we know that Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world, it's expanding, it seems that because of that wipeout of the people in the 23rd century, 24th century, it seems that Christianity prevailed. So it is not a practice, though, as it is today. People at that time did not accept the editing that took place by the councils and the cutting of the scripts. They do not accept dogmas and denominational fractions. They have no place there. Faith is totally a personal matter and is expressed and experienced in a personal way. Even though they do have services, they do have mass liturgies, they do have such things. And they also have a mass prayer every day. I mean, every day during the sunrise and during the sunset, everyone who is awake is turning there and is praying and expressing the gratitude to what surrounds them. So what has been kept is the essence of Christianity and the principles of brotherhood, love, altruism, forgiveness, mercy, etc. You know, all these good principles that have come out of all this teaching. So people very often gather and participate in mass services and liturgies that take place very often. From spirituality I jump to sex. Okay. So, marriage as we know it today is non-existent. It does not exist. Youngsters are strongly discouraged to have any sexual encounter before they have concluded their duty to the state. Of course, if that happens, the Commonwealth will accept it, but you know, it's in very rare occasions that this takes place. So usually they discourage kids to have sex before any relationship, and they tell them, you wait, and you have to wear a little cloth here, you know, like a
headband.
Excuse me?
A headband?
Yes, like a band. They wear it here. It's a white thing, and it denotes that this is a virgin. So the day that they resign from their work and their duty is finished, they can take that away, even though they are still virgin. But they take that away at that time. So they have a ceremony. At the night they go away from their duty service, and they make a ceremony to take that out. So after they become kives, then they can freely engage in any relationship they wish. These people seem to be far more naive than our early 20th century visitor. Now, this guy from Switzerland thinks that these people are so naive that he compares them with the people that Thomas Cook found in the Pacific. I mean, how naive can they be? I mean, they are absolutely naive. You can talk them into anything. You can lie to them and they buy whatever you tell them. So he really stresses that throughout the book. He says how these people are so naive. Now, they will not indulge in sexual intercourse unless there is a very strong feeling of love connecting them with their mate. They will not have sex for sex. They go there only if there is a feeling, a responsive feeling. Now, they are waiting for the Liebwirch. The Liebwirch is a candid, gentle, without self-interest love that resembles an adolescent love. If the Liebwirch comes, then they go into it. So this love is a reflection of the Samith. Samith is the source. It is a transcendent reality, quite big and overwhelming. I will analyze it in a while. This love has its root in the thirst and nostalgia for the fine, the pure, the essence. And to save time, I didn't show you a film a while ago. It's only 3 minutes, but I didn't show you that. But maybe later on, if you wish, I can show you that. So, what they are looking for, it's the nostalgia for the fine, the pure, the essence. That's why at that time, Socrates, Pythagoras and Plato are so highly valued, and their statues are all over the place, next to Christ. Why? Because these people, 2,500 years before our time, 4,500 years from their time, were stressing that actually we people are nostalgic for the essence, the pure, the fine. So people are allowed to mate as they wish, and it seems that their education and socialization is so effective that they mate only if they have feelings for the other person. They are not obliged to stay with their mate forever. They can always change. Falling in love with another person is acceptable, but they should immediately announce that to their partner. Sincerity and clarity are expected in the relationship, and when finally two people decide that they are really ready to have offspring, they submit their request to the Office of Statistics. And it is the office that will determine whether and when and how you will have a child. Because they don't want to overpopulate again. Of course, we are talking about billions again. We are still billions in the 40th century. They did not, they still build up. Okay? Now, physical exercise and fitness. Centers for physical exercise and fitness do exist, as well as swimming pools and all kinds of sports. However, these people with their sluggish temperament and lack of any fighting motives despise the chase of records and have no prizes for the winners.
Sounds like a
They have no winners, actually. They just play for the game. Very anti-American, isn't it? I mean, competition as we understand it in our days is totally foreign to their way of thinking and playing. Now, what is the most important development in the Noguera? Noguera, I mind you, is the New Age. After years of meditational practices, a shift in human consciousness takes place that will change the world. It is called the oversenses, the ability to transcend the senses, the ability to oversee. A practitioner at the Anderson Institute, the 70-year-old Alexis Volki, managed to make the breakthrough by extending the abilities of the human mind. That was done on September the 6th of 3382 AD. So supervision, as we can call it for our understanding, and the acquisition of the new conceptual properties has become a reality. But that is not a privilege of Volki alone. In the next 36 hours, the structural shift started happening to other people as well. Do you remember the 100th monkey theory? Okay. When he made the transition, suddenly hundreds of people started behaving around the globe the same way. And supervision is something far greater than intuition, clairvoyance, or prophetic vision. Supervision is the immediate enlightenment which is added upon the other mental and spiritual qualities of humans. It is the immediate knowledge and the direct communion with the Lis, the light. So they had the ability, they didn't have the need of a near-death experience to make the breakthrough now. They have the ability to do it, normally speaking. So here is Nibelwirch. This is the new ability acquired by the Volki. It came as an improvement, an add-on to the former mental and intellectual capacities. What were once considered as metaphysical or transcendental experiences are from now on within the realm of the positive scientific understanding, whether you believe it or not. That happens in the future, yes. So I said the other time, no www.skeptic.com anymore. They go home, they may out of business. It's finally becoming a part of the mental capacities of people. But of course, this did not happen in one day. Now, there is another element there, Reuswirch. That's an ineffable happiness of a supreme level. It is so overwhelming that people cannot digest the incoming happiness and the subsequent understanding of the newly acquired qualities. So what happened to them is that in extreme cases, it led people to self-destructive behavior.
Wow.
What they did is they committed suicide by the hundreds. Why? Because when they came into contact with it, direct contact with the light, so why waste time here and here now in embodiment, incarnated? Why should I be incarnated since I can go to the light? So thousands of people started committing suicide, and and that was like a boomerang for the breakthrough. And all the skeptics came out to say, look what you are doing, you're killing people, and there was a very deep fight which lasted about 60 years till it all subsided down, and then it was finally accepted even by the medical community that there was a change even a biological change in the brain. It was evident that the brain changed. So this fundamental transformation with the biological and anatomical changes that were brought the end to what we know of as a human being. This is the end of Homo sapiens. From now on, a new form of humans will be dominating the globe and will be called Hominis Occidentalis Nobis. So it's the new human being that arises. That is the important thing now here. These new people are transcending. That's the shift in consciousness we were talking about in 2012. It will take 14 centuries for this to happen. But what is the people glimpsed at with the help of the supervision? What was it? What were they, all these people, looking at? It was the samith. That's the important thing. What is the samith? It is the sum of whatever exists. It is the objective, multidimensional, ontological reality. Its essence is non-penetratable by our senses or mental capacities in logic. It is the great reality that through Nibelweg, people now know for certain its existence. This knowledge was enough to ease the metaphysical quest of humans for spiritual salvation. What was once metaphysical or transcendental is now fitting into place. Within the samith, one can find the after-life rewards for virtue. What Socrates was talking about. The divine providence, the certainty of immortality and reincarnation, an acceptance of a higher order of the world and the exclusion of the reductionist mechanistic view of it. What else is art but the constant effort of the invisible to become visible? People at that time have done a breakthrough in all arts. Everywhere you go, in every city you go, you see galleries of paintings, of sculptures and amazing statues, of amazing beauty. He describes all kinds of architecture that is not only on the ground. There are colonies over the earth, and they are actually revolving around the earth. Huge cities, people prefer to live over there as well, not only down to earth. And he's talking about fantastic music that is played, and concerts all over the place, all the time, and poetry, and philosophy, and theaters, all over the place, beautiful theaters, that they still see theatrical plays all around, and dancing. People are dancing all the time. They have festives and festivities and nice times. They have their arenas. Their arenas actually are their modern theaters, not the arenas we have here today. But they are places where you see movies, but they are 3D movies, and as you sit down, you think you are into the movie, and you are actually identifying with one of the actors, and the movie understands with whom you identify, and it goes on like this, and you think you are inside it. So whole colonies are built around the earth, like, already architects have been designing such things and how they would be feasible in the future. So we have many prominent figures, and of course in our time we have a lot of figures, but in their time, for instance, their Homer is Larsen. The greatest poet ever is Larsen, for them. Their Plato is Domenicus Albani. Their Da Vinci is Knut Valdemar. Their Galileo is Armstrong. Our Beethoven is Valmadel. Our Bach is Ruthermel. Our Michelangelo is Nichenfeld. As I showed you a while ago, the book has hundreds of those names. They are useless to us. I could be saying these names and names and names, so what? I mean, you cannot see that. He only saw that. So we come to the Rosenbau. What is the Rosenbau? At the Easter of 1086, a miracle takes place at the school. It's Easter Day. And the 70-year-old Kostia Rundulov has witnessed the miracle of seeing a new species of roses blossoming after 50 years of experimentation. His roses are sky blue, glowing, fluorescent, and when people see them, they are shocked by their beauty. And when they try to place them somewhere, they will not blossom, but only in the Rosenbau area, and only by people who have the quality to grow them. Not everybody can grow them. Only these people who are mature enough and competent enough, spiritually speaking, can grow them. Okay? So there is a principle of adequacy there. Now we have the déjà vu. The love story continued. When the contract of a promise comes true. For Dienach, Sylvia is the future incarnation of his former love, Anna. We should note here that even though Andreas Northam was flirting her and trying to seduce Sylvia, he never succeeded. She never yielded to him. And she yielded only when the body of Andreas Northam was taken over by the personality of Paul Dienach. That's where they fall in love. And that's where they made love. But in the spring of 3906 AD, they fly into the Alps, and as they walk by, they find themselves in the precise little spot that was their meeting place in the 20th century. At that point, he realizes what has happened and understands that his promise, their promise, had come true. He had a déjà vu feeling that he knew at that time what had happened. He was at the very spot that he had given the promise 20 centuries ago. So finally,